Hello everyone, how you doing? Welcome to this webinar on behalf of the TEFL org. My name is Carl, I'm a teacher trainer, I'm an online English teacher, I'm also an English examiner. I'm based here in Northern Ireland where I do all of those things, but previously I have worked in many places around the world teaching English as a foreign language. So, so if that's the sort of thing you're interested in, then please do so I had a bit of an audio problem there, but I seem to have fixed it. Hopefully you can still hear me. Um, so today we do a series of these webinars on a range of different topics. Um, the topic today is going to be about teaching teenagers. Going to talk a little bit about sort of what a teenage class, what sort of things you need to do to sort of keep control. I'm not really going to go into a huge amount and sort of like the theory behind teaching teenagers. Is more about keeping control of classrooms and basically getting them on side with you. Please let us know where you are in the world. As I said, I'm in Northern Ireland. This is a live webinar. So you never know, you might find someone in the chat who lives quite close to you. Uh, Also, if you've got any questions at all about teaching English as a foreign language, please do put that in the comments. And when I get to the end of my presentation, I will get to those questions. Right. Okay. Let's have a look at this. Okay. So, teen tactics, engaging secondary students without losing control. I'm going to start off with a couple of questions. Please do put the answers in the chat here. First of all, what were you like as a teenager at school? So I'm going to tell you a little bit about me. I wasn't a great student at school. I really only cared about a few things. I cared about music. I cared about sport. And yeah, beyond that, I cared about going out and seeing my friends, really. Beyond that, I wasn't particularly good. I don't think most of my teachers at school would remember me or at least really think I was that good a student. Please do put in the chat what sort of teenager you were like at school. I never really thought that I was going to be a teacher, which is a bit ironic because now that's what I am. Now the next thing I want to say is how can you change these questions to be more interesting? I'm going to put three like tasks or questions here that you might ask some of your students. And then at the end of the presentation, I'm going to give you three ways I've changed them to make them a little bit more interesting. Now, you don't have to keep exactly the same question. Basically, keep something in the same sort of field or the same sort of topic. So one of the things that teenagers might get asked a lot is to describe your last holiday. How would you maybe make that a more interesting question for teenagers? What's your favorite food? Again, how could you maybe make that more interesting? Or what's your favorite movie? These are sort of questions that you might ask your students, and you might think that they are great questions. They're the sort of things that they'd want to talk about. And yeah, it might be, but can you think of a different way of saying these three types of questions to maybe make them a bit more interesting for people? Right, let's get started. So, why can teens be tricky in English lessons? So, going from my experience of teaching teenagers in sort of a range of countries, Asia mainly, but also a big chunks of Spain and Italy, um, basically low confidence in English. I have found quite a few, especially in Asia, that don't really feel they have much confidence in English that they can speak in English in the classroom. Um, they they do have a lot of fear of making mistakes, fear of embarrassment anyway as a teenager. But obviously, in speaking in different language, you might have sort of mixed ability classes, and if your students have towards the lower end, they have difficulties, be a bit embarrassed to speak. So a bit of fear, embarrassment, and making mistakes as well. They have quite a strong social focus. So what does that mean in terms of the classroom? That means that, they might sort of be there, spend time with their friends more than alone, or they might have a certain group of people that they really want to work with and don't want to work with others. And this can cause you issues, but in terms of pairs, in terms of making them feel like this is a worthwhile lesson for them to learn. And their focus on that can cause issues. A lot of them have quite a bit of energy. some of them sort of maybe don't have a huge amount of energy, but generally, especially the boys, they have a lot of energy, and it can also be a bit unpredictable in terms of their mood, in terms of their personality as well. It can sort of change. There's a lot chemically going on with teenagers, um, in their bodies that can sort of affect the way that they learn. So in terms of that, and in terms of general engagement in the EFL classroom, how do you keep them engaged? Basically, your job as a teenage EFL teacher is to turn them from sort of passive learners to active users. Now, what do I mean by passive learners? They will look, you will probably not be their full-time English teacher unless you go work in a school, um, which, those jobs, like when I'm talking like a government school, on which those jobs for EFL teachers aren't those. What you will probably go and do is work in a private language school, and what that means is you will see the teenagers maybe for 1 or 2 hours a week. Might be different if you're online. You might have more longer lessons if in some places, but if you're those teenagers are probably learning English in their high school or their middle school, and they're probably being taught the rules of grammar and the rules of sort of spelling and things like that a lot. What you've got to do is try and turn them from being know those rules to actually using English in a worthwhile way. So basically, how does that work? You've got to think that they come from a history of probably a lot of teacher talk. They've had a lot of talk from their teachers. Um, it's very high teacher talking time, very low student talking time. You've got to increase the amount of talking that students can do. That is a big part of teaching teenagers. You've got to move from exercises where they sit there filling in forms, where they're filling in worksheets, practicing their writing. You've got to move that to real communication, ones where they're actually talking about things that are interesting to them, doing writing about topics that are interesting to them, or actually communicating in the language instead of just using and learning language. You They will have quite a big focus on accuracy, and what you want to do is try and move that to fluency. They probably won't practice their fluency much in school. And you can have fluency in writing, you can have fluency in speaking as well, but specifically speaking, you've got to do activities where they're talking a lot and they're sort of building their confidence. That is a big part. Um, and we've done webinars where it talks about task-based learning. I think with sort of pre-intermediate and upwards level, um, teenagers, task-based learning works really well. Giving them a task that they can complete in the class and show that they can actually communicate to accomplish something really does boost their confidence and shows that all of this grammar that they might have been learning at school, this vocabulary they might have learned at school can work really well in the real world. So it might be worth going back and looking at my task-based learning webinar. Start with the hook. The first 3 minutes of a kid's class, I think, are really key. They're coming in, you really set the standards, you really want to set the scene, you want to grab their attention in that first 3 minutes. First impressions are quite important with kids. It's quite if you lose them early on, it's hard to get them back. And starting with something like, "Please turn to page 4 in your textbook," doesn't hook their attention. You've got to try and give something to them that will make them interested in the lesson you're about to. Now, I'm not saying don't use textbooks. You can go use textbooks, but doing it straight up quite quickly can be a bit. So use a quick question on the board when they're walking in. Before you even like before they've even all arrived, have the question up on the board, like a discussion question you want them to see. So when they walk in, they're thinking about that as soon as they're in. Put an image up or even put like a meme up. Now, I'm not really one for memes myself, but I probably could find some memes that and then get them to think about it that way. Images, memes, you don't have to put like a question with the image or the meme. Just having it up on the board. Why is the teacher put that on? What's that doing up there? Why is that teacher up there? Why is that picture up there? Can really, really help them to sort of engage quickly. Try and relate it to their world somehow. Having something generic up there isn't particularly useful. Just try and relate it to teenage life. Now, I'm 45 years old. What do I really know about teenagers? Not a huge amount, but generally the same sort of topics are around, sports, um, music, a little bit of fashion, that kind of thing. Movies, just sort of getting them thinking about that, talking about things that they like can really, really help you in the class. And make it communicative right from the start. Don't go straight in with a language lesson, talking about grammar or vocabulary. Go in there and try and give them a task that is a bit communicative. Uh, and one of the a very, very a very, very sort of easy way of doing this is to say something like, "Would you rather? Would you rather do this or would you do this? Would you rather eat chocolate for the rest of your life or pizza for the rest of your life?" Something like this can really, really help you um, to make it a bit more interesting. Right. So simplify the language, don't simplify the thinking. Now, what do I mean by that is, challenge their ideas. Get them thinking a lot about their ideas. Get them using their ideas more than their grammar. Getting teenagers to think a lot and express themselves, is not particularly great. Oh, there's problems here with the sound. Let me see if I can fix any problems with the sound. I'm sorry about that. Let me see if I can fix that at all. Uh, People are saying that they're having trouble with the sound. Let me have a look at this. Okay. Is that better? Maybe. Let me try that. I don't know if that's better. Sorry about that. So basically, challenge their ideas, not their grammar. What do I mean by that? I mean, get them to use their ideas more than their grammar. Okay, don't get them um, to spur out as much grammar as they can. Get them to think and to show their ideas in a fluent way more than necessarily an accurate way. That can really, really help them to build their confidence. That can help you to um, that can help them to express themselves, which is a lot better for them. Oh, good. The sound is better. Sorry about that. I think what happened was I had the YouTube link open as well. Sorry about that. Right. Keep the input comprehensible. Putting a text in front of them that is a bit difficult for them. Put in a listening in that's very difficult for them. That's not something that they're used to. Something that's sort of come out of left field away from their normal way of thinking can be quite difficult. If you put a text in front of adults that is difficult, they might give it a go. They might sort of try and sit down and try and work it out, maybe help each other. If you put a text down that's you put a text in front of kids that's difficult or teenagers, they give up on it very easily. And that can be a bit of an issue. Try and encourage some sort of deeper thinking around the topic. So a bit like I said before about those questions that I put, how would you make them more interesting? If you can encourage deeper thinking instead of just giving them straight up questions, that can make them feel a little bit more interested in the topic, interested in the lesson that you've got. So try and keep sort of the same language, the same sort of topics, but try and make better questions. And that's not easy to do as a teacher. I think something like AI can help you with that. But if you just doing the same sort of language, but having better questions that make them think a bit more and make it a bit more exciting, a bit more interesting, can really, really help them. Give them some scaffolding. So if you're going to ask them a bit more of a question that's a little bit out there, a question that's a bit more sort of making them think a bit more deeply, have some phrases on the board that can help them with this. Maybe pre-teach some nice phrases, pre-teach some vocabulary. But don't be afraid with teenagers to give them some sort of starting sentences to try and help them to get through a task. That can really, really help them. Make sure you design classes for movement and talking. Every sort of focus in a teenage class should be about speaking, giving them every opportunity to speak and less about you speaking. And get them up and get them talking. use your imagination. And I've done webinars where I talk about games with movement and physical, that kind of thing. But if you get the teenagers up, give them little tasks to walk around, that can really, really help. Things like an info gap or mingle tasks. Now, what's an info gap? That might be where they've got some information, but somebody else has got the rest of the information. They need to link them together to complete a task. Or you might have the information up around the room printed, and they have to get up and walk around to try and find the information. Or some sort of mingle tasks where, right, everybody stand up, try and find somebody who likes the same film as you. Something like that. And they walk around. Oh, I like Ant-Man. Oh, okay, that's good. Oh, but I don't like Ant-Man. I like Wicked. These films can't. Yes. Oh no, I don't like Wicked. Oh, but I like Wicked. Yeah, that's good. Okay, right, we're together. Stand up and mingling, that kind of thing can be really useful. Running dictations where they have to, one sits down and the other one runs to get some information, either from you or from someone from another team or from someone on the board. And they run back, they speak to the person, the other person might sit down. Things like that are really good with teenagers. Line debates where you put them in two different groups and you give them like a topic and they have to discuss that together. That can be really, really useful. Saying, something, you put someone on the board. If the class is full of football fans, who is better, Ronaldo or Messi? This side you are Ronaldo, this side you are Messi. Work together, see if you can have a discussion, see if you can debate who's the best one there. And doing music for things like the mingle tasks, for maybe things like any task where they're up and talking, having music on in the background can really, really help them. Can really, really make them feel a little bit more interested. And if you're going to give them like a time limit, putting on some music and saying, right, this music's about 4 minutes. That's how long you have to finish the task. Having that in the background can also make it feel a bit more interesting for teenagers. And you can do that online as well as face-to-face. Try and make English the default in the classroom. Now, I've done webinars where I talk about English as an L1, but basically you're looking to create an English zone. You want the teenagers to know that coming into this classroom is an English zone. Going online is an English zone. It's going to be as much as it can English only. And you really want to, and this is tough if you are, if you'll have the same L1 as your students, but you really want to, as much as you can possibly, use English for the routines at least. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean, the tasks, setting the tasks, and also setting things like the breaks. Also, setting things like the rules in the classroom. Using your own English can be really, really useful there. You've got to model natural talk. It can be sometimes easy when you're teaching kids to change your voice a lot and to change the way you speak, but definitely try and model natural talk with them. Okay. You've got to praise any effort and participation. If their English is poor and of a low level, but they are trying their absolute best to only speak in English, praise them, praise them, praise them, praise them, praise them. Think about, if you can, when you're giving out grades, you give some grades for participation. So that could be things like, simple things like doing the homework on time, but it can also be, working well in pairs, working well in groups, helping each other, giving a grade out for this, making 10%, 20% of their overall grade about participation can really, really help. Use L1 only as a last resort. So it's okay to use L1, I think, every now and again in the classroom, but only when you've got yourself into such a dead end that you can't get out of it at all. Definitely use L1 only as a last resort then. Thank you. I'm sorry about the sound problems. It looks like it's better now. Everybody's saying yes, that's better. I apologize if you couldn't hear that before, but if you do have any questions or any points about this, please do put it in the chat. If you need me to go back and talk about anything that you maybe didn't hear before, also please do put that in the chat. Apologies for that sound. Right. balance their freedom with firmness. You are there to be friendly to them. You're not there to make friends with them. Now, I have been in EFL classes where I've made friends with the adults. I've always, and even when I was sort of younger in my 20s and had sort of teenage classes where they were 17 or 18, I've always had a line between you and the students. Now, this might sound simple, and and I'm not saying that people would necessarily go out to make friends with teenagers, but the teenagers can try and maybe want you to be their friend. That's not what you're there for. You are there to be friendly with them. And don't go into a teenage class thinking I'm going to be Mr. Strict or Mrs. Strict. Go in there and try and be friendly with them. Okay. Clear routines and clear signals. So you've got to make sure that what you're saying to them in terms of instructions is very, very clear. And you've got to, if you're going to do something quite different, you've got to make sure that you do it in a friendly way, and that they know that it's okay if they make mistakes here. You've got to be very, very clear. Also with the signals, don't spend too much time with one teenager. Teenagers really, really pick up on this. If one student is asking you a lot of questions and controlling the class, you've got to somehow deal with that. By all means, if you've got a quiet class, it can be quite useful, but make sure that you sort of say to them, pick someone from a different group, pick someone from a different table at times. Having clear signals shows that you are being friendly to all of them and that you're not just going down the route of one of them. Have some sort of calm authority. Don't make the students, don't be Mr. Strict or Mrs. Strict in the classroom. Don't be, even when they're pushing your headache to the maximum levels, make sure that you are calm throughout that. You've got to show fairness. You've got to show consistency when you're playing games. Might sound simple, but it can be, in your head, you're going to have students in the class that you don't particularly like. You've still got to be fair with them. You've still got to be consistent with all of them, because they will tell you if they're not. You will see in their face if they feel like they're not. Really, really important, all of these, and things to be aware of when you're teaching. Be prepared for bad behavior. Now, what is bad behavior? Sometimes bad behavior can be something that's a bit exuberant, where they're trying to be funny, that kind of thing. But what are you going to do if you've got bad behavior? And I've done webinars where I talk about how to control bad behavior in particular. That might be worth looking at them. End strong with your classes with teenagers. Close the lesson with a purpose. Now, what do I mean by this? I mean, have a routine that is finished at the end, that you always do at the end. And something that I've heard doing is something called an exit ticket. So what that means is you could get them to write down on a piece of paper one thing you've learned or what in this class today, or write down one thing you think you did well in the class on today. And as they leave, they give you this piece of paper. You look at it and you go, "Yeah, great, well done. Yeah, oh, I'm not sure. Try that one again." Get them to go back. Having some sort of ticket that they give you as they leave, or they put on the box and they write their name in, something like that, can really, really sort of show them that they've improved in this class, that they have done something in this class. It also, if you've got some sort of bad behavior, you can go down the route of, on your exit ticket, write down something that some good behavior you did today. And then if they're like, "Oh, I don't know," then you can sort of use that and say, "Well, I don't think you did this actually. I didn't see this." Or some sort of reflection prompt, something like how they've improved, something like this. They could tell their partner, they could write it down in a little diary, something like that. Have some sort of mini review game so they know that this is the end of the game of everything that they've done today. And, it can be something, a little game around giving out an opinion, something like that. It doesn't have to be necessarily about grammar or vocabulary. Right. If you're going to teach teens online, basically the similar theory behind it. You've got to be engaging. You've got to try and be quite controlling of the tech. And one of the issues with, obviously, teenagers and controlling is the camera. They can be quite wary of being on the camera. But without them being on the camera, it's very hard to sort of raise a community. I always say that the camera doesn't necessarily have to be on in the main room. Um, but I think it does have to be on in breakout rooms for sure. Now, you might have a different rule. You might say that the camera has to be on all the time. It's kind of fine. I think that that can be a bit wary for them all the time, just looking into the camera all the time or looking at themselves on the screen. But you've definitely got to have the camera on at the start to know they're there. And I think at various periods throughout the lesson, you could say, can I all see you on the camera now? You know, you'll have different rules about it. Clear tasks in the breakout room that are interesting, that are useful to them. And, you know, helping them with task-based learning in the breakout rooms can be really, really good for the students, for teenagers. Visible routines. So if you want them to do something, to click on something, or you want someone to move to a certain breakout room or something like that, if their language level is low, or if you know that they're having problems with this kind of thing, put up a PowerPoint slide that shows it. Let the teenagers know that what they need to do can really, really help. Use all the tools that you have, you know, and I'm not talking about tools necessarily that are in Zoom. Use some tools that are outside of the classroom. Things like Flipgrid, things like Google Docs, that kind of thing can really, really help to improve their engagement. And, you know, talking into a camera isn't everyone's cup of tea. So make sure that they've got other chances to use their English as teenagers. Right. So try and engage them as much as you can without losing control over the class. Definitely try and engage them. Make sure that the topics are useful to them. Okay. Before you correct them, make sure you've got that connection. Make sure that they like you and that they know that it's a safe place in order to use their language. If you go straight in and you correct them quite early, that you can lose them quite early. Make sure that you've got them practicing their fluency before they're practicing their accuracy. Make them challenge their ideas. So get them to think more about their ideas more than about their language. Having them sit thinking about what grammar tense they should use in the next sentence is more of a problem than if they're thinking about what language. So think about what ideas they want. You know, give them a little bit of a chance to think about their ideas, but then go and don't correct every mistake that they do with prepositions. Get them to use their language. Get them to use their language to show their ideas. That's basically what you're doing. Having structures in lessons creates a positive atmosphere. They like to know what they're doing. They like to know what's going to happen next and what's going to happen at the end of the class. Right. So I'm just going to go back to the thing that I did at the slide at the start. So instead of saying to someone, describe your last holiday, what could you do to make it a bit more interesting for teenagers? Please, if you've got any ideas in the chat, please do put them in the chat. What sort of question could you ask them, which makes them think a little bit more about it instead of, oh, here's another question about my last holiday. I went to Spain last year. It was very hot. I went to the beach. Can be a bit boring. Asking them a question such as, if you could go anywhere in the world right now, where would you go? Now, the grammar here is slightly different. You know, your last holiday is talking about past tenses. This is, you know, using a bit of conditionals. But really what you want to do is to get them to think of an idea. Where would you go? Well, Japan. Why? Because I saw a Japanese movie that I really, really like. I want to go to Tokyo, or I like sushi, whatever it might be. Just getting them to use their imagination could be a bit better than doing something that they might have done in their senior school or their high school. Instead of saying to them, what's your favorite food? Again, a topic that they could be asked for a lot. Yeah. Something like, if you can only eat one food for the rest of your life, only one food, what would you eat? Oh. So this is getting them to think about food, but it can be quite boring just to think about your favorite food, you know, think about, okay, I can only eat one food. Oh, maybe I eat pizza, different types of pizza, vegetable pizza, meat pizza, plain pizza, something like that. Just gets them to think a bit differently. What's your favorite movie? I this is something that I get in exams when the students have to ask me a question. They ask me this a lot, and it kind of bores me, this question, I must admit. But if you ask them something like, which movie character are you most like? Which movie character do you like, instead of your favorite movie, or which movie character do you not like? Things like that can just make it a bit more interesting instead of just those specific topics. Okay. Thank you, everybody. I can see some questions. I'm going to get some now and some ideas. Please, any questions at all, please do put them in the chat. So I asked originally, what were you like as a student? Rick said he was a good student. You were interested in learning. Well done, Rick. I hope that was useful. Now, why were you a good student, Rick? Was it just you personally being a good student, or was it because of the teachers? Was it because of the topics? You know what made you a good student? Was it just that you were a great person, you wanted to learn as much you can? Well done. Different from how I was at school, for sure. Stan said he gave up towards the end of time at secondary school. Yeah, I sort of gave up around about the age of 14, 15, I think. Sporting activities, me too, even though I was really, really bad at them. You know, I just kind of thought that I only wanted to do my hobbies really more than my learning. And you know, people sort of educate themselves at different times in life. I didn't go to university till I was sort of about 3 or 4 years older than most other people at university. So, you know, people get to different times. And what you got to think about is, if you're teaching teenagers, they might be at a time in their life where they're like Stan, he's sort of given up, or they're a bit like me, all they cared about is music, or they really cared about is sport. Charles, hi. Have students used L1 even if the teacher's very low level L1? Yeah, so so I have had adults and kids ask me questions in their L1, even though I have not got the first idea what they're saying. Now, sometimes I have got an idea what they're saying, but when they ask me a question L1, I never really answer it. I just say, sorry, I don't understand. And I sometimes say it in their L1. Yeah, it's a frustration for them. Now, what can you do if they're consistently doing that? You can ask them to try and rephrase it in easy language for them. Just say, okay, or just say, look, have a think about it. You could go down the route of getting them to use a translator if they have very low L1, they don't have much L1. Now, if they've got a bit of L1, sort of from elementary level up, they really should be able to try and ask you in some sort of broken English that you can understand. But if they're consistently asking you in L1, either the class is too hard for them, either they're in the wrong level, or you've given them topics or tasks that are too difficult for them. But yeah, this does happen. You know, it's okay, I think, to ask one another. If you say, okay, I'm sorry, I don't understand that, ask Maria. Maria might know, and then she can translate something like that. I feel like that's okay, but it's not ideal to just keep doing it. You need some sort of plan to stop doing it. Rick, definitely. Should we intervene when blatant bullying occurs in the classroom? Yeah, for sure. I think that's definitely something that you need to do. Now, what can you do if this is an issue? So if it is online, you could do something like Emmanuel has said, that you move to the student to a waiting room, turn off the chat. So you can use sort of tools like that in the online world. Now, if it's face-to-face, it could be a bit difficult. Now, if it's bullying in their L1, you might not know necessarily what's going on. What you need to do is ask a third party. So ask someone that's not been bullied, do you know what was being said here? But don't do it blatantly to them. Just sort of say to the, you know, if you get them saying, can you tell me what was said 5 minutes ago? Something like that. Obviously split them up. I think if there are two people that sit next to you and you think one is bullying the other, move them away. I think trying to fix it there and then in the classroom can be tricky. So doing it afterwards, by asking the people to stay behind can be useful. Asking the one that's being bullied if they need any help, that kind of thing, or if there's someone else they want to talk to, all this sort of thing can happen. Sometimes getting them to speak to a member of staff in their L1 can be quite useful if you've got like a secretary or something like that in the school. That can be very, very useful. It's a tough one, especially if you're only sort of seeing them for 1 or 90 minutes an hour or 90 minutes a week, what to do with them. But you know, have an idea in your head. Also speak to your senior teacher, speak to your manager, see if there's anything like that they can give you some ideas on. They might have a policy how they deal with blatant in the classroom, bullying in the classroom. I think that's all the questions. I think unless someone's got any more, Maria's saying she's looking to obtain your TEFL certificate. Hi, Maria. Then this is definitely the place for you to be. If you go to tefl.org, tefl.org, there's loads and loads of information on there about our courses, that kind of thing. Thank you, everybody. I hope that was useful. I apologize for the sound problems at the start. Really not quite sure. I have to look into that, why that was. Maybe I just said because I had YouTube open, which I think was sort of repeating the sound. I apologize for that. Please, if you've got any other questions, please do let us know. You can put it into the chat. Our team cover it. If you've got any questions for me specifically, they'll tell me, or if not, I'll go in and have a look. We also have lots more information on our website, tefl.org. There's blog pages, there's course pages, all that kind of thing on there. There's also a Facebook group where you can talk on that as well. There's also things like a podcast that you can download and read. So podcasts you can download and listen to. They're really, really useful, and you can learn quite a lot from them. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are. Bye-bye.